Hello everyone. I have fixed my computer and I installed Ubuntu Studio. So now my computer has both Windows and Ubuntu Studio on it. I'm really liking Ubuntu Studio so far as a recording and streaming operating system, so I would like to start doing my recordings on this operating system. However, if the audio quality is not good for you all, then I will revert back to Windows. As part of the first recording on this operating system, I would like to continue what I was doing last time, which was discussing how video game stories can be better. My last recording was all over the place, as I was trying to cover too many different subjects that I felt should have been covered. We're going to try to focus on counterterrorism units on this recording. Counterterrorism units are present in games like Counter-Strike, Rainbow Six, and a few others. My reason for focusing on it is because it provides a unique opportunity for me to show you how different things are in other parts of the world. I will not be covering the United States in this recording for that reason and a few others. The FBI does handle counterterrorism at home, and maybe in some cases they get special jurisdiction to extend their reach. But overall, it's just a headache to figure out which branch is doing what in the United States. With the foreign units, they're a lot easier to nail down because it's very straightforward. A lot of countries choose to combine their military units or police units into basically one ball. That's what you will see as we go through a lot of this. To start off, we'll start with the famous GSG-9. This has been in numerous games, so I don't think I really need to provide too much of an intro or explanation as to what GSG-9 is. But instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down and look at publicly known missions on this recording for you. I think what makes GSG-9 so good in terms of their experience and things of that nature is because they deal with problems at home and abroad. If you look at some of these missions that are listed, you'll notice that there's a few international ones here. Here's one for Somalia. And let's see if we can find some others. I think there was Amsterdam. Yep, Amsterdam. So you can see that GSG-9 gets a lot of experience at home and elsewhere. It's a really interesting jurisdictional case, I guess you can say. One other thing to note with GSG-9 is that a good portion of them, and I'm not saying all, think that they're the best in the world. It's just the mindset of this particular unit. I think that if you're going to make a story about GSG-9, I think that you should try to be informative of not only their ability to function in other countries, but also bring to light that they feel like they are the best in the world. That's just a mindset. And you know what? A lot of units have it, but GSG-9 has probably more of it than the other ones that I have personally read about throughout history. But moving on to the next famous unit is what people affectionately call GIGN. Now, GIGN, like GSG-9, is a counterterrorism and police unit. They do handle problems at home as well as abroad in certain circumstances. We'll scroll down and you can see that for yourself. You can see that they were an advisor or something in Saudi Arabia with Saudi Arabia topics. But yeah, you can read that for yourself. I'll link it. But just like GSG-9, they've got some international experience, and it may vary between the two units. GSG-9 gets, from what I've read, has gotten more involved physically than GIGN, but again, this is all based on public knowledge. There's probably tons of missions that GIGN and GSG-9 have classified. So let's go and move on now to probably a unit that you've never heard of. I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. My Spanish and Italian is horrible. I refuse to butcher this name. But anyways, this particular unit is really interesting because, like GIGN and GSG9, it is a police unit that's also counterterrorism. They add one other role to their function, and that's protection of VIPs. That's something that you hardly ever see. It's not normal for a counterterrorism unit or really a police unit to be in charge of VIPs protection. But this is one of them. But yeah, you can read about this because honestly, there's a lot of things in here that I wish I would be able to pronounce, but I just simply can't. However, the point of me even mentioning it is to show you that they have a lot of unique functions going on. Moving on to the next one. I'm just going to call this Unit 269. Unit 269 is unique in that it's a portion of the IDF, Israeli Defense Force, which means that they are military. Now, even though that they are attached to the Directorate of Military Intelligence, they still function as hostage rescue, counterterrorism, and reconnaissance. Probably more than that, but that's the main highlights of this unit. Now, this is a unit in the Middle East, so they deal with some of the worst scum of the earth. For that reason, they are very tough, and they get a lot of experience in war conditions. GIGN, GSG9, and some of these others don't really deal with wartime conditions to the degree that Unit 269 does. Unit 269 is in areas where global conflict happens. That's a pretty big thing to say. So they deserve a mention in this list because, well, first of all, it's very unique, and second of all, they deal with some crazy crap. Let's move on to one of the other international units, Joint Task Force 2. This is a Canadian Special Forces unit that deals with counterterrorism, reconnaissance, and a few other things. Now, I don't know if they deal with stuff at home. I would imagine they do, but most of their work is international. But yeah, you can see that they deal with some pretty crappy areas too, or at least battlefields, but yeah, so you can read about all that, but at least they're worth mentioning because it's an international unit. Next on my list is the Alpha Group. This is something that you probably won't see all that often, or at least, well, mention, I should say. I think that's because most people, when they think Russia, they think Spetsnaz, but actually there are very special branches within Russia that do functions differently than Spetsnaz does. This is one of them. So Alpha Group is law enforcement, counterterrorism, hostage rescue, and a bunch of other stuff. This is probably the most versatile unit out of the list I have pulled up. They deal with so many different things, and they've had years of different transitions. You'll even see that over here on the right. From 1974 to 91, they were Spetsnaz of the KGB. But then as the years went on, they finally ended up in the Federal Security Service of the Russian Federation. So, and then another thing too is that their units are stationed in other parts of the world because either that politics changed or something. It's a whole mess. You're going to have to read that for yourself. But the point is, they have units elsewhere, and they've had numerous organization changes. But yeah, Alpha Group is one of Russia's best counterterrorism units, hands down. So they're worth mentioning. Another one that doesn't really get mentioned is what some people call Grom. Grom is not exactly well known because it's a smaller unit, and on top of that, it's a Polish unit. Most people wouldn't think of Poland being involved in counterterrorism or really high-end stuff, but they are. This particular unit, Grom, has actually worked with some very high-end names, and you can even see that mentioned down here. In September 2004, U.S. Navy SEAL sniper Chris Kyle was temporarily assigned to Grom's Combat Team B in Baghdad for a week. The CIA reportedly found Grom snipers useful due to their low rules of engagement threshold. Then where was the other mention here? Oh, it's down here. But yeah, you can see there's a picture of U.S. Navy SEALs and Grom Naval Warfare Team practicing boarding skills. So I want that to sink in. This is a unit that's worked with one of the best snipers in history and one of the more famous military units, the U.S. Navy SEALs. That is quite the resume of this unit. Now, whether or not that they're ethical is a completely different matter, but fact of the matter is that they deal with some crazy crap. Now, I want to mention one other thing semi-related to this. Poland does build its own weapons for Grom and its military units. If you're familiar with FB MSBS rifle, that's one of them. If you're familiar with the FB barrel, that's another. The FB barrel was used in the game PUBG. Moving on. This is where we start seeing some really, really specific units. I'm not even going to try to pronounce this one either, but Special Operations Unit is what we're going to call it. Now, like a lot of the others in this list, their missions have been classified. So unfortunately, it's really hard for me to tell where they've been or what their experience is. But from what I know, they are a maritime unit. They were at one point in history seen dealing with pirates. So this unit is... it can be counterterrorism, but for the most part, their job is maritime. So they usually run into pirates, or they're checking trade boats and things like that. Based on what I've read, again, they're classified for a lot of their stuff, so I can only comment so much. But yeah, that's worth mentioning. Another one that's on a similar page to that is the Special Boat Service, SBS for short. This is one of Britain's units. Now, this one is a military unit, and you can kind of see that over here. It has a long list of engagements, and you can see that most of them are major world wars, or, well, global conflicts, I should say. But, yeah, you can see that they've really been around the block, just by looking at this list. So, yeah, they're another one worth mentioning. Most people are familiar with SAS, so that's the reason I chose to highlight this unit rather than SAS, because SBS really doesn't get mentioned that much, and to be fair, it's one of the obscure units. It does very special stuff, and for that reason, it doesn't really get mentioned in the news like the SAS or some of these others. But as you can see, in just the amount of time that I've been sitting here and going through this list, that things get pretty complicated or pretty interesting pretty quick. So if you're going to make a game about these units, or a unit similar to that, I highly recommend doing some reading. There's plenty of resources online. Wikipedia is not going to be the best source. I only did that because I need the quick and easy mention of what they do and things like that. Now, I have read about these units before, so I know what I'm seeing on Wikipedia that I've mentioned happens to be correct through other sources. But you should be able to find a really reputable military website or something to make mention of these units. As I was mentioning with the not GIGN, GSG9, they have a mindset that kind of goes a bit more than the others. So try to look for that when you're reading this stuff, not just about their history and their weapons, tactics, and all that stuff. Also look for mention of like their mentality or something like that, so you can get more of an idea of what you're dealing with. But I will link all this in the description so you can go Google all this stuff and read more about it. I just wanted to give a brief overview to show you that when it comes to doing these video game stories, it actually is fairly easy to make a realistic game, such as a war game or something, while maintaining the educational value as well. Well, education or realism, because if you're not allowed to use these names in your game, you can do something very similar to it. Use it as a basis for whatever it is you're trying to do. I think that a lot of this stuff can just be used as a compass, if you will. Like I was mentioning with the guns in the last video, these units can be used as a compass. If you're trying to make a video game about, let's just say, naval combat, for example, well, you might be able to use SBS or special operations. If it's strictly counterterrorism, then you might be able to use GSG9, GIGN, the Italian unit, that IDF unit, Unit 263, I think it was, 269. Yeah, so you could do any number of things. You just need to have an imagination and a will to Google. That's all there is to it. But for now, that's really the most I have. Thanks for listening.